Good morning. Yes, it's Michael A. Gerber, the wandering Jew, and Rabbi Levi Cunin, the practicing Jew. I'm sure if you've joined us in these conversations we've been having, you can pretty well determine what the difference is between the two. I'm chuckling about it. At times I don't chuckle about it, but at times I do chuckle about it. And here we are. So, Levi Cunin, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank God, I'm doing good. Good to see you. How are you doing? You're doing well? Your family's well?
My family's well. My family's well, thank God.
Baruch Hashem. Good.
And yeah, and here we are locked down, but we've been locked down now months. I don't know. How long has this been?
Did you just say lockdown?
Lockdown.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. We're not locked down. We are in quarantine, but we're not locked down.
Oh my God. What's the difference?
Lockdown, think about it. It means that some force is locking you, you know. When you want to go out, we go out.
Yeah.
You know, it's just changed.
Well, yeah, I went out yesterday. I did. So I'm obviously not locked down.
There you go.
But I am shut down. So what can I say, as so many people are. And here we are. And we're in a conversation. You wrote me yesterday about Torah. You wrote to me about Mount Sinai. And I had this, I don't know if I'd call it an intense experience, but I had this experience to a degree that I haven't had it before. And that is how distant I am from the experience of Hashem. And I say I haven't had that before because in some way I always felt that I was connected to God. But I come to realize that I'm connected to, I'll say, a God, to God, much differently than you are. And you've said it on our calls, you've said it in our conversation, that the spiritual experience is completely different than the ordinary experience. But indeed, my experience is, if you will, a spiritual experience, not an ordinary experience in the way that you've used the word ordinary. But it's significantly different than the relationship that you describe that the Jewish people have with Hashem, that Hashem has with the Jewish people. And so I think that's a worthwhile conversation to have. I see also that when we write to each other, as we've done on WhatsApp, in some way, I believe that we communicate better when we write than when we speak. At least that's how it occurs to me. So having said what I've just said, let's go back to the beginning where you've described God, described Hashem speaking to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. Before Mount Sinai, at the parting of the Red Sea. Speaking to Moses, to the burning bush. All of which is so difficult for me to take in, to accept. So speak to me about that, Levi.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for sharing. I want to preface what I want to share, two stages. First of all, just to get present to the different ways in which we have certain types of relationships. So certain relationships that we've had in life that we may have been very close to somebody, and at some point, we dropped that relationship and we moved on. And most relationships, we have the luxury somewhat to do that with. But when it comes to our parents or our children, there's what's referred to as an innate relationship. And because of the innate relationship, even if there's not a living relationship, even if the two are not talking, there's a part of that relationship that you can't sever. It's innate. So you see this, and I've seen this as a rabbi, that there are people that they're disconnected from their loved ones, and then something tragic happens, and just like that, all the stories go out the window, and they're reconnected with each other. So what got reawakened? What got reawakened was the truest aspect of their relationship, the part that is innate, that's not possible to sever. But that's not always present in our mind and who we are. It doesn't work that way. It's not always present that way. If we look at use that as a metaphor, the different levels of the relationship, we could take that also back to the connection, the innate connection that your soul, your neshama has with source. And when that second is awakened, then none of our stories mean anything. There are times that Jewish people who did not practice Judaism, but yet when it came time to stand up to either converting out of Judaism or being punished by death, they chose death. That doesn't make any rational sense. The way we understand that is, and you find people giving up their lives in other religions, unfortunately. But over here, you have someone that's not observant. Many stories of people who are not observant, and yet when that moment comes that defines you as a Jew, something doesn't allow her to say, no, I'm not. Something deep. That's part of the innate relationship that we have to Hashem. So, in the relationship with the lower levels of our relationship, the informed one, perhaps there's a difference. There's the environment and the dialogue and the narrative that I was raised in and I pursued. And then there's a dialogue that you were raised in and you pursued, okay? So in the lower levels of our soul, where it lives by that which is informed, yes, there's a difference between you and I. But in the truest level of our soul, at that moment that some people feel, what makes Jewish people show up to Shul on Yom Kippur? If they're not practicing, like, what's the point? But the truth is, it's beautiful because it's a expression of the most innate part of who we are, which is beyond logic. And that's okay, just like the relationship between a parent and a child is beyond logic. So
Beyond what?
Beyond logic. Mm-hmm. You know, that innate place is beyond logic. People do things for their children that they would never do for anyone else. And I don't mean just, I'm talking about like they would never be able to act that way according to their regular behavior of things. It's because it's their child. So having said that, when you're saying you're feeling disconnected, I want to assure you that not only have you felt the Hashem moment, you felt it many times in your life. I've been present to it when you did. Times when you kvel and break into tears, talking about something that is related to your neshama. That's a moment of feeling Hashem. Yes, in a contracted way. Yes, in a way that we can handle. But if you put that on steroids, like really, then you could talk about what the tzaddikim and how they're present, because they're present to that emotion all the time. So we've all felt Hashem. We may never have put it in that context, and that's because God has gotten a bad name over the last 2,000 years. So I have to say that I myself am careful not to use that word and try to use other words to talk about that which we're talking about. Now, in regards to the story of Egypt, you know, I want to just remind of Egypt and Sinai. You know, the way the mind works is if this, then that. If this, then that. There's a process. That's the way that the healthy mind works, you know. And I'll just say that, unfortunately, unless we pursue something in a certain type of way, which I'll share with you in a moment, it's very likely that the if this, then that is predicated on something that doesn't have a foundation. Make sense? Like people will have a logical outcome, but their whole basis has no foundation. And I'm seeing a lot of this, by the way, in today's world, where unfortunately there's politics that is getting involved in science. So when politics gets involved in science, then the if this then that has to suit the political need. And that means that unfortunately scientists have to be silenced or whatever it is, because that's predicated on a false foundation. So how do we know what's a true foundation or not a true foundation? I'll just say the following. I think that it's so amazing, something I learned in Hasidism, that the beginning of the beginner's mind is letting go of what you know. And this is how it works. We're very, very limited beings. We see things in a very, very, very rigid context. And therefore, when we hear about Sinai, that they heard what they saw, and they saw what they heard, it makes us think that's so bizarre. That's like impossible. How can an ear see? How can an eye hear? And that throws us off. That's like saying 1 + 1 = 3, you know? But what it really throws off is the mindset that we're accustomed to, that we've become comfortable with. The one that keeps us locked in a certain framework that doesn't allow us to at least begin with acknowledging our limitation. That whatever we know is nothing compared to what we don't know. And of course, that which we don't know is where it's all at. So how could us limited beings be able to make a deductive reasoning based on foundations that are false? So we have to always be open to hearing stories that perhaps until now we haven't heard about, but being open to the fact that perhaps there's a reason why I didn't hear about it yet, but maybe there's something there that I could pursue, and let me pursue it in a way that doesn't have baggage to it. And when we take that approach in reading the teachings and stories of the Torah, it lets go of many of our preconceived ideas and notions, if that makes any sense. But it's the preparation of understanding that there are things that we don't know, and we acknowledge that there's possibilities that there are things that to us in our current state of mind do not make sense, but they could make sense. That's the beginning of the pursuit of knowledge. Verstehst?
I hear what you're saying. I do. And I accept part of it, which is, of course, we don't know what we don't know. And of course, we don't know far more than what we do know. And when we hear something that comes into conflict with what we believe we know, it creates a dissonance that separates us from it in a way that disenables us from understanding it. All of that I accept. But as you say that, as you speak about what you're speaking, as you're speaking about Egypt, as you're speaking about the Red Sea, as you're speaking about Mount Sinai, as you're speaking about God spoke to the Jewish people, as you're speaking about all of that, you have, and I'm going to use the word, which is an unkind word, but I'll use it kindly. You have been indoctrinated into accepting the stories that have been shared with you since even before you were born, that lead you to this conversation in the way that you have it with someone like me who hasn't, through which, and by the way, to convey to me that I need to let go of my position in order to see the truth.
I didn't say to let go of your position, number one. I said to let go of the way in which you take your position.
Oh, I understand the difference between, yes, I'll then agree. You didn't say let go of your position. You said let go of the way in which you arrived at that position in order to perhaps open the door to another way of arriving at a position.
I feel actually like I'm sitting in an emyth session, and you just repeated to me something that Rabbi Gerber would say all the time.
What's that?
To let go of oldco.
No, of course. And blank piece of paper and beginner's mind, and on and on and on. I've been saying that all my life.
Correct.
One way or another. I'm just having difficulty doing it.
Well, I also want to say about the indoctrination part. I want my personal journey, as I shared in the previous episode, was infused with my own personal choice at some point. Yes, I was indoctrinated, but because of just the way of who I am, I'm very curious, and my curiosity and my rational mind were great participants in where I'm at today. So it's not surrendering my rational mind, but it's pursuing. I'll just give you one thought. It just hit me when I'm sitting here. You know, the fact that you're Jewish, this is deductive reasoning, okay? The fact that you're Jewish, it's safe to presume, and I'm talking about like something like factually, that most of your ancestors over the last 3,000 years actually practiced Judaism very much like I do. And the reason why is because if it wasn't the case, the likelihood is we wouldn't be talking today as two Jews. You most likely wouldn't know you're Jewish. So if you look back at the origins of today, most American Jews, some guy did research recently, most American Jews are actually descendants of particularly Hasidic Jews, but that's a longer conversation. So their great-grandparents were Hasidic Jews. So now think about the following. You're an intelligent person. You come from intelligent stock. And most of your ancestors must have been so also, I would imagine. And if most of them bought into the story that we're talking about, then it's reason enough for us to say, one second, if I just look at it just purely from that perspective and say, you know, there's something about it. Maybe I'm not seeing it right now, I get it. Maybe I'm not connecting to it right now, I get it, totally. But there's something about it that kept that iron chain connected throughout that time. And it was all in the Torah. The Torah was the inner bond. The Yiddishkeit is the Torah, you know. So all I'm saying is that, yeah, I have plenty of questions. I could name a couple to you. You know, I know Adam and Eve were set up. That's for sure. You know, that's a longer conversation. But the point being is that that the Rebbe would repeat something that really resonates with me all the time. The Rebbe said that today we have the possibility to learn the teachings of the Torah and the inner meaning and the inner flavor in a way that we can take sustenance from it. What does it mean to take sustenance from it? Just like we told in Proverbs that when a person hears a beautiful thought, they could be hungry and they're not hungry. You know, it satiates them physically. So the same is also true about many of our questions that we have. I'm not underestimating the power of those questions. I understand them because although we come from different spaces in terms of our upbringing, but I relate to the fact that many of these are bizarre in the light of what we know in our world, right? But I'm just saying that it's something that it's worthwhile to take that into mind. You know, the fact that most of your personal history are people who were doing this, you know, and something kept it. It couldn't have just been ritual. It couldn't have just been like blind faith. It couldn't have been. They went through too much, and they didn't surrender, you know. But most of the last 2,000 years, Jews were forced to convert to Christianity or be persecuted. That's just a reality. So anyway,
Thank you,
that's
Levi.
my thoughts. It looks like we're already at our 20-minute mark. And by the way, I know it says on the screen David Cunin. I forgot to change that, so that's my son's name. So I'm using his computer.
Well, a delight seeing you again, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Yeah, and I feel like I have not answered your questions.
No, but you addressed it.
Yeah.
So you didn't answer my question, but you addressed the question. And that's really all that I ask of us here, is to address the question, to pursue the question, to experience the question, and to engage in the question. Because when I thought this would be a wonderful idea, our conversation, I honestly thought it would be a wonderful idea because it would attract people like me, as opposed to people like you, to engage in a conversation with people like you in a way that they have not been willing to do before. That's what I thought would happen. And our job is to see and pursue that opportunity. To the degree every Chabad house opens its doors to every wandering Jew, every secular Jew, in a way that every secular Jew feels welcome, not threatened, welcome to discover a part of themselves they've never discovered before. That's the best way I can say it. And given my experience of you, and given my experience with so many other shluchim, I believe it's very, very possible that could occur. And if that could occur, that would be a blessing. So thank you, Levi.
Thank you. Have a fantastic day.
Bye-bye.